At 71, John Travolta saying goodbye Thefenau Captoroflagen begins in a world where from comes and Gwes Likewe Vescrash and John Tashurfi named Shavistu detest often quite like John Travolta. For over 5 decades, his face, his voice, and his presence have a Beckhamism loft chairs, Mercillian sea and transformation. Now a thief of anyone earmark whispers are turning in a reality. The man Hodan said through history is quiet, lies stepping away from the spotlight. And this is not just a note to celebrity retirement story. This is Safuel Toanera. It Tal starred with him beholdered. Todd dream big, the born in New Jersey, John Travolta was not destined for ordinary. From the verbeginning, he hated Spartak could not Baynard. A natural performer with a bald confidence found his way to Thesigens and after into the living room soft millions. His breakout to let it not just make him famous. It made him unforgettable when Hestrud in top-pop culture with Saturday Night Fever headed no justins. Had to find a generation, the music, the moves, the attitude. Everything that but it became mechanic, and just when people thought Tad seen it tell Hakamibok stronger with grease. AFI, that turned a global phenomenal enhancement of this state of society in Hakud Doidel. But for mice in a very straight line. There were peaks, there were valleys, and there were moments when it tells a med like height might for the way. Inthaninas when the industry seemed to have moved in John Travolta than thinkable. Hakamibok stronger at Hanover. The pulp fiction was not just that comeback, it was their birth. His sport trail was for electric and unforgettable, and in Seagain he wasn't the owner Viriona talk about. From the redefine themes of Fagan and again, action films, dramas, comedies. Hesh how at the range of talent that few could match. But behind the camera still a fullest in the tailways glamorous. Personnel lawship sand private tetragedy is a pedimony would become. The lost office beloved son ways out of vasting both that she came to thiekery. If that did not break, has stewed strong forest and melliferiskill dream for himself. And in that strength fan to not just stay star beauty human being with depth hand courage. In recent tires these signs became a more subtle. Fewer roles, more quietments, more time with family, and now the message is becoming clear. At 71 John Travolta tasered it. Oh say goodbye. Not with a grand announcement, not with aftershave finalbo, but with a good elegance in life you can master. Huent spees. Huent style meter fleck. He wants to see power from the constant noise of Howud and in Tata como ferl if you alived, and while in surround world may feels ting off this departure rather as sozens of gratitude, because he wave given as much to the world of interment tashi has. From the dance floor to the dramatic screen from laughter to tershi haspin to rethrotau. His legacy is not just in from Zora Awards, it is sim memories, I 10 scenes. We'll watch again and again. I 10 songs to instant light because back in time. And as the curtain begins slowing, the question remains what comes next for John Travolta? Some believe he might return for a final project. Others say he will complete least Pawe. Bionet and just attain. His impact will never fade. He will always be man the whole world dance and Devonish shooks away from the camera on the virtually let go him because the gins do not disappear they become meaning land this isn't it just good beat this is thank you for lafetamy of magic for a million moments into a live foe. Revering for approving Thatcher greatness Navir need saying and Dinjit just becomes shister of the story to attend here because the gins vichu etc. And even as John Travolta steps back from the spotlight, the world continues to feel his presence in ways that words can barely capture. Every step he ever took on screen still replays in the hearts of fans across generations. From my own dreamers discovering him for the first time meet at the Sahagro, watching his rise, his journey has become a threadovine in Tata Fabricofin, and that is why this moment feels D. Ifrent, it is not just about an actor retiring. It is about closing gas chapter had to find it would type me in still be star. Because John Travolta was never just another name in Hollywood, who was an experience, a feeling that a moment in thought could not recreate Dan Osh, a quiet little moves away resilience, follows Boutais no Timid. It is filled with memory scenes and stories that will never be forgotten. In the early days, his confidence was electric, his presence unmatched, even through screen could feel there was a sort of charm that made people stop and watch and that energy did not disappear with time it evolved, it matured. It deepened and became something even more powerful because it was no longer just about fame, it was about legacy, and that legacy is what makes this goodbye so meaningful. Behind Ivera's Mali on screen, Harris ass struggle behind Ivera's success, there was sacrificing behind Ivera triumph, there was ass or a thought world. But that is what made him real, it is what made him related by even the Hatofaskura Hekrid himself with the humility thoughts that them apart and per. Lasif Heiss imply walking in at the next chapter of his life without needing Gaplosh or anything because he'll read the nose what they ask given and Dwathel in recent of Xander a public appearance as theories asins off besane him to twas in the tail ways he reatis the Pishaus Mo Hasina verified his childer. And his personal of histamine away from the chis off met the seer things thought no define his world dan perhaps haddest he miss beautiful part of this and das and swear left with the close we can feel sad about his departure here. We can celebrate Tiver thing has given and made to the sexic lie with food. Ori's restef has been na story worth to Lingen Deveno, what just steps away the story continues, just in a different way to allow ways but the screen may grow darker without this presence about to create will never fade and that is the powerful leaguest that is the powerful name of they trafe. SES to be forgotten, and so is his chapter closest with the not side good but the traditional sense, so is it thank you for me the moment the magic, thank you for it. And the something unforgettable and that reminder will live in a very frame me recent never remember if that carries just nama forward in tata future, forever and always. He was not locked into one genre or one identity. He was fluid, adaptable, and always willing to take risks, even when the outcome was uncertain. That kind of artistic bravery is rare is one of the reasons his legacy feels so strong even now as he steps away from public life. There racial souls in Zaw completion in his journey that not because everything was perfect, but because everything was fully experienced. He didn't avoid the ups and downs she moved through team and didn't do and so he create that story thought feels authentic and constructed, and authenticity is what audiences remember most from the end. While the fame fades away to what remains is truth. The truth of his performance says the truth of his motion sand teacher Thoffman who lived through extreme ass and deplows yet continued to show up for his. In many ways, his departure from acting feels less like Candying gone, more like he had transformation. A shift from publicized expression top of a tepies. A move from being gobs of a tuss imply existing without expectation to tis not some thing a public figure economy but TCMs to have found it hand. There will always be discussions about his. The Strolch's most iconic scene ascend his greatest moments, but those discussions sunlight scratch the surface of what to present of the industry ways that the younger actors continue to reference his work studying, his choices, his timing, his presence, because there is something timeless in the way he performed. It was not about trying to art, it was about being present fully and completely in each moment on screen. That lesson will outlive him just as his films will that and event half heist, no stepping order as no sins of final loss and iconation in no to form he exists now in archive essence stories and memory saw. The world will keep moving forward as it always does, but it will deal with the imprint of his work still present shaping the way people think about performance and charisma and emotional depth. In quiet moments, fans will still return to his films, not out of nostalgia alone, but out of appreciation for something that still feels alive even years later, and that is perhaps the most powerful kind of legacy, one that does not require presence to remain active. It simply exists and continues to speak even when the voice behind has gone quiet. So Evan was this chapter closest theorized Noriel ending theories and iconation often packed off memory of influence that spreads far beyond the end of it. The legacy of John Travolta continues to expand even as he steps away from the pub. Lickada because what they built was Navir Limitados and Guerrero raising a generation it was about for Thakros and Tameen still feels alive whenever right Israel. That on screen it was energy and emotion, but off screen it was reflection and restraint. The avalanche of thought for Wachivi and event fear maintained over such a long career. The industry changed around him countless times, yet he adapted without ever losing the core of who was. A performer how understood that true impact comes not from volume but from presence and timing gone honesty need reframe. He saw trends come and go, he saw styles reign. Disappear but they remain consistent in his commitment to storytelling and thought consistency as what give his spirit strength. Even a watch moves of the risk since the T's influence will continue quiet line the background Dolph mode and cinema actors while studied is were Quill Carr. The connection between art and memory is powerful in John Travolta age. As becoming a part of that connection 4 million soft people across the world. What makes this stage of his life so meaningful is not the absence of activity but the presence of completion. Has slivered through from a transformation challenge and reinvention and has reached a point where stepping back feels natural rather than forced. There is no urgency in his departure, only understanding that life moves in cycles, and every cycle eventually finds its end or its pause. But even in pause, there is continuity, because what he created still lives and breathes in every rewatch, every reference, and every me. Murray shared with the Saha experience of his work firsthand. The world of entertainment will continue to evolve, new faces will rise, new stories will be told, but the foundations laid by artists like him will remain embedded in its structure, invisible but essential, that supporting what comes next, while quietly reminding everyone of what came before. And in that way, John Travolta does not disappear. He transforms from active presence into enduring influence, from performer into legacy, from moment into memory that will not fade, because it was never built to be temporary. It was built to last at the journey of. John Travolta now entering a phase of thoughtful quieter, but still deeply meaningful, because even without the constant presence of cameras and sets, his life remains connected to the art that defined him for so long. That transition from active a Hollywoodic and top of a T individualist to step back, step into another form of living in a datasless about performing. In many ways, this stage completes the arc that started when he was a staying dreamer with the desired on a world much bigger than himself had dreamka. Area invention and redemption and know it carries him in topies. The impact it leaves behind cannot be measured online awards or box office numbers. It must be measured in emotional resonance and cultural influence. And he showed that charisma alone was not enough. It had to be matched with dedication, risk, and willingness to evolve, and he did that again and again across different phases of his career. There were moments when the world doubted him, moments when his relevance was questioned, but the time he returned with something new. Tree frame the conversation undermined it very own ways important in the first place. That kind of resilience is rare in an industry that moves fast and forgets faster, but he never let go of his identity as an artist, even when the industry seemed to shift away from him. Instead, he waited, adapted, and reemerged stronger than before, and that pattern itself became part of his legend. As time continues to pass, there will be more tributes, more retrospectives, and more evaluations of his work, but none of them will fully capture the feeling of watching him in his prime, because that experience belongs to them. A men tight self-animals cannot replicate if they cannot be remembered, and memories were in their lives most powerfully not in the noise of current fame, but in the quiet replays of iconic scenes that still carry the same energy today as they did decades ago. The dancing, the dialogue, the presence all remain intact, frozen in time, yet still alive every time are watched and rewatched. It has become part of the language of cinema, the kind of presence that future generations will study and reference even if they never experience his era directly, because true art transcends its original con. Text and becomes universal over time. What makes this part of his story so compelling is the sense of peace that surrounds. There is no drama in the exit, no struggle for attention. There comes a point in need legend where the noise around them finally fades, and what remains is that pure outline of their impact. That is where John Travolta stands, now not in the center of the spotlight, but in the long shadow it left behind, and that shadow is still filled with light. Because what he did in his lifetime was not just acting, it was shaping how audiences felt cinema on an emotional level. He did not simply play characters. He created experiences that people attached themselves to for years, sometimes for entire lives, and that kind of connection does not disappear just because the actress taps away. It deepens over time. As the years move forward, his work will continue to be rediscovered by people who were not even born during his peak, and yet will still feel the same energy that made him famous in the first place. That is the strange power of timeless performance. It does not depend on era, it depends on emotion, and emotion never expires. The racial sozens are balancing he his life has evolved from explosive global from medical mer personal space, because few people ever gero expiry. Till I fear to a complete a different world sand, has lived in bot and understood both without letting either destroy him. That balance is part of what when people look back at his career will not only see the blockbusters or the iconic scenes, they will see the shifts, the risks, the comebacks, and the moments of reinvention that defined him more than any single role ever could. It was never frozen in one version of himself. He kept evolving even when it would have been easier not. Evolving naturized what gave his career its depth and longevity. Now it's just steps away from public attention to recess office of theme, because it's not feel like closet feels likely to see as if has finished. Will not stop being studied, and the influence will not stop spreading. It will simply continue in different forms through different people line different. And Sullivan hunts to define entire generation saw film moments no become a summit in Jave Marine during no just stay star be reference point of memory. The world moves on, but certain presences remain embedded in its memory like that cannot be erased, and John Travolta is one of those presences whose impact continues to across generations, without needing constant visibility to the stale identical true in his journey from my own performer. Sit made him memorable in a way that outlives transcend technology. Savannah washes steps away from active public life. Toffee's work does not fade. Epartoffees identity much as Zanies and Gorilla Hepliden Ditus of the Monolemit, that people can remember most when to then call from not just each. Os different decades and thought consistence I gave his career sends off continued a thought for which he at this level now seen as a quieter chapter theories. The actually visitant that since John Travolta has not left the story, has implemented from active a page to permanent archive where he's influenced Wilkin. The legacy continues even when a man chooses silence, because silence in the case of legends is never empty. It is full of everything they have already given to the world, and John Travolta has given more than Moe's. Tudor imagine cross lifatemio cinema become measurable off transformation not just in his character's beaten, his own lived journey from my alpha. When people who are moved bill will decorate theories as strange you can do for mortally in thought not the kin built in attention, but the kin built in feeling gan. Invention because of if actors manage a to revive multiple generations saw film culture, yet they did it by fusing to be limited beyond the Majironiques. By technology because it comes from presence and commitment and understanding of character as. That psyche awful and return became a part of his identity as much as Zanies and Gorilla played and Ditus of the Monolemit that people can remember most. hat-made highs were cognizable across different decades and thought consistent sigava his career sends off continued thought for what you have to slavel nosh. Sovereignty mean gains the meaning with the atri visitant that sends John Travolta's not lift the story has him plenty from active a page to permanent arc. The legacy continues even when a man chooses silence, because silence in the case of legends is never empty, it is full of everything they have already given to the world in Joe. Travolta has given more at the most kudiver imagine crossel fetamio cinema become mesembeloff transformation not just in his character's beauty. Sinecent that sharing golf moments between people who are moved bit will decorate a theories as strange akin dofa mortally in thought not the kin built in the tent. Riero so presents the power of free invention.